Hello, my name is Bart Knijnenburg and I've been asked to make an Ask A RecSys Expert presentation on the user-centric evaluation of recommender systems. The field of recommender systems has traditionally focused on the offline evaluation of algorithms with metrics like RMSE and precision and recall. This practice is like the fast food of recommender systems evaluation. It's a quick and easy way to get results, but in many cases it leaves much to be desired. That's because research has shown that accurate recommendations don't always lead to user satisfaction. As Sean McNee and Dan Cosley have pointed out in their paper, being accurate is not enough. Also, short-term satisfaction doesn't always lead to long-term fulfillment, an issue Michael Ekstrand and Martijn Willemsen raised in their paper Behaviorism is Not Enough. Moreover, we must acknowledge that recommender systems are more than just an algorithm. The input mechanisms and output visualization of a recommender system are of crucial importance to their success. So, how do I, a recommender systems researcher, evaluate my algorithms for other qualities like user satisfaction and fulfillment? And how do I study the effectiveness of the user interface elements of my system? The solution I will present today is a controlled user experiment. A user experiment is a scientific method to investigate how people interact with systems. The goal of a user experiment is to systematically test how different system aspects, which we will call manipulations, influence the user experience and behavior, which is done through observation. These manipulations that I talked about are the system aspects that are under investigation. So that may include the algorithm, but it essentially can be anything in the system, including its preference elicitation mechanism and its information presentation method. This part is actually very similar to A/B testing, and like A/B testing, you can use complex multivariate test designs. The observations I mentioned are means by which you plan to evaluate the success of your solution. This may include objective metrics like CTR and conversion rates, but it may also include subjective measures like perceived recommendation quality, system effectiveness, and choice satisfaction, which are measured during or after the experiment using multi-item measurement scales. Finally, the systematic approach of a user experiment allows one to make causal inferences about the presented manipulations. Key here is to keep everything in the system the same, except the manipulation. If you now randomly assign participants to conditions, then any difference you find can be attributed to the difference between the conditions. A user experiment is like fine dining. It's not always necessary, and it does take considerably more effort to prepare, but a good user experiment is arguably the only way to go if you want to give your recommender system a truly exceptional evaluation. But wait, you say, I'm not a trained chef. Whenever I cook something complicated, stuff usually just ends up catching fire. Well, don't worry. In our handbook chapter, Martijn Willemsen and I have carefully outlined the process of conducting a user experiment and evaluating its outcomes. 5 minutes are obviously not enough to describe the entire process in detail, but here are some important tips to get started. First of all, you have to carefully decide what system aspects you want to test, so what will be your manipulations. And sometimes you may want to manipulate multiple things at the same time. For example, only by manipulating both the length and the diversity of a list of recommendations were we able to demonstrate that short, diversified list of recommendations can overcome choice overload. Next, you should carefully select your participants and randomly assign them to one of the versions of the system. You can also let each participant use all of the conditions. This is a within subject study, but a between-subject study is usually better. A good user experiment tends to have around 150 to 200 participants, but this really does depend on your specific study design, and you can do what is called a power analysis to verify. Next, confirm that your participants notice your manipulations and find out how the manipulations impact their user experience in terms of how they feel about the system, the process of using the system, and the outcome of using the system. To measure participants' perception and experiences, you can use pre-validated multi-item measurement scales, such as the ones that you can find in the appendix of our UMOI paper, which is linked here. Next, you should ground your study in user behavior. You can use participants' perceptions and experience then as mediators of the effect of the system aspects on their actual behavior in the system. And that allows you to explain the observed differences in users' behavior as it's caused by these system aspects that you manipulated. And finally, you should contextualize your study by measuring personal and situational variables. For instance, the best preference elicitation method might be different for experts and novices, which is a personal characteristics. Now, the framework that you see here was first presented in our UMOI paper, and it has been used by dozens of recommender systems researchers to design and evaluate their experiments. Finally, use structural equation modeling to evaluate your results. This is a statistical method that optimally uses the multi-item measurement scales that I just talked about, and it produces models explaining the user experiment that are really intuitive to understand to a reader. So I hope that in this video I have demystified the process of conducting a user experiment a little bit. And hopefully you are now excited to learn more. If you want more detailed instructions beyond our handbook recipe, I have a dedicated page with tutorial slides and a great dataset for you to use to try things for yourself. And if you are really serious about becoming a user experiment chef yourself, I've been teaching a 3-part course series that covers the deployment of controlled experiments and basic and advanced methods for measuring and evaluating their outcomes. I personally love doing, talking, and thinking about user experiments. I also advise a number of students that would love nothing better than conducting or teaching about controlled experiments as part of an internship or an industry or faculty position. So if you're interested in hiring them, or if you have specific questions about running and evaluating controlled experiments for a specific project, please don't hesitate to contact me. My team is always happy to help.